countdown begin.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the 100 Fantasy Football channel. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Ivan Herrera, and the purpose of this channel is to bring purposeful community to fantasy football. And I'm so excited because it is Saturday, so we're going over so many different things as we gear up for week number 9. Before we go any further, I would be highly appreciative if you would please hit that like button. It helps out by spreading it out to the algorithm, so it would mean a lot if you hit that like button. Also, if you would subscribe, that would be awesome. Also, hit that notification button so that way you know whenever I go live. As always, I go live every single week, so then that way we can prepare for Sunday, and I do a few drops on Sunday as well. And I also have all my social media information in the description below, so you can be abreast as to when I go live and when I drop content. So here's the breakdown for today's show. We are going to be going over all the injury news that has been going around the NFL in week number 9. We're going to be going over some of the big news that we saw as well as far as headlines go, and then we're going to go into some of the players that I love going into week number 9, and then we're also going to conclude it with a live Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them below, so then that way I can answer them for you to get you better prepared for the upcoming weekend. But before we go any further, of course, let's go ahead and begin, as always, with our notable injuries. And we have a lot of headliners here, and of course the big one that was making waves throughout the entire week was Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was put on the COVID-19 list, and there was a lot of controversy as to why he was on there to begin with, being that earlier into the season he did say that he was immunized. And unfortunately, him being put on the list shows that he wasn't vaccinated, and that stirred a lot of conversation, a lot of controversy. But the short answer as far as fantasy goes, he's going to be out for week number 9 going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, which puts quarterback Jordan Love into the starting lineup to go against the Chiefs on Sunday. And it's kind of a bummer because you were hoping to see the headliners really show out for this matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Green Bay Packers. So the Packers are going to go on without Aaron Rodgers in week number 9. Of course, the big one, the big news that we got earlier last week was Derrick Henry being out for the season, and it was a bummer because he was off to a phenomenal tear. And for those of us that actually analyze fantasy football and make predictions, I didn't think that this was going to be sustainable, and maybe we're seeing the beginning of what could be the end for Derrick Henry, being that he's had so much usage, so many mileage with all the yards, with all the rushing attempts, and then now we're seeing the foot foot surgery that he took on Tuesday that will sideline him for a bit. And it's not that you ever can predict injury, nor do you ever hope for it, but it's one of those things that unfortunately is part of the game. And we're seeing now the Titans having to make moves. They picked up Adrian Peterson, as well as now relying on Jeremy McNichols to carry the load. And it's going to be tough to see how Adrian Peterson is going to pan out. Apparently, he's already impressed some of the coaching staff in Tennessee and will get a heavy amount of the work on Sunday. And it's going to be just hard. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Titans respond. I would hope that the Titans would be now a more pass-heavy offense, considering that they have the weapons to be able to support that kind of strategy with A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, of course, as well as Josh Reynolds. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. Another big news that we got was from Michael Thomas. He announced earlier on his social media platforms that he was going to be out for the remainder of the season. And this is a bummer because we knew already he was going to go into the season injured, but he saw some setbacks in his rehabilitation with his ankle, and that unfortunately is going to sideline the star wide receiver for the entire season, and it really makes you question what his value is going to be going into next season in 2022. But we're going to see how this plans out now that we have to deal with now New Orleans having to know what life is going to be like without him, being that they now have their star quarterback as well, Jameis Winston, out for the season. So it's going to be interesting to see how things pan out there in New Orleans. So Taysom Hill, who I thought was going to start this upcoming Sunday, is going to take the back seat. Trevor Siemian was the confirmed starting quarterback. So you're going to see Traquan Smith, Marquez Callaway. I imagine Alvin Kamara is going to get still the same usage, being that they're not going to expect much other from the wide receivers. So that's the news there for New Orleans. Saquon Barkley, who was put on the COVID-19 list, was removed from it, but is now still on status to be out, as he still continues to deal with the nagging ankle injury that he was been dealing with for the last couple of weeks. So that means Devontae Booker will get the heavy workload going into week number 9. And he's been phenomenal. He's had double-digit touches. He's also put up double-digit points in fantasy football since taking over. So he should be a good plug and play this upcoming week. And then we also saw that James Robinson did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday. He's still very questionable with that heel injury that he's dealing with. And then we did get reports out of Baltimore that Latavius Murray is going to be out with the ankle injury, as well as Dawson Knox for the Buffalo Bills, who is also going to be out with a fractured hand injury. And we still haven't gotten word of what's going to be going on with Kyler Murray. He was questionable. He did not practice the entire week. Coaching staff in Arizona is saying that they're going to reevaluate him, saying that he does not need to be actually physically in practice as long as he had the mental snaps to get ready for the week. It's going to be tough to really see how that's going to pan out, because if he goes down, you're going to see Colt McCoy having to take over, which you're not really too crazy about, but that's going to be what will go down in Arizona. DeAndre Hopkins is someone that's also doubtful to play for Arizona. And then one of the final ones that I've been keeping my eye on before going live was Christian McCaffrey. Still has not been ruled completely active for the game tomorrow, but he has been removed from the IR. That still does not mean that he's going to play 100%, but they were saying if he does play, he may be on a snap count, so do expect Chuba Hubbard to still be involved in the mix. And of course, if Christian McCaffrey is out for week number 9, Chuba Hubbard should be a must-start and as a fringe RB2, a strong flex consideration going into week number 9. So with that, let's go ahead and go into some of the big news that we saw this week. And one of the bigger ones was that we saw wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley announced earlier in the week that he is going to step away from the NFL for a little bit so that way he can take care of his mental health. Of course, there's no specific timetable as how long that's going to take, but we do acknowledge and we do respect someone looking to put their mental health as a top priority. And my prayer is that he finds the time to be able to accomplish just that. So prayers over to Calvin Ridley, praying that he gets all the help he needs to make sure that he's back effectively and efficiently, because he is a talented wide receiver. And what that does for the Atlanta Falcons from a fantasy perspective is that you just would now assume that Kyle Pitts is going to get most of the work now for Atlanta, and that this will free up as well as Cordell Patterson to do more work as well. And then I also believe too that this is going to do a lot you would hope that naturally this would do a lot for Russell Gage, but I think if anything, you're going to see a lot more for Tajay Sharp. Tajay Sharp had 6 targets in week number 8, had 5 receptions for about 58 targets. practice. So expect him to get a lot of the workload as well if things don't continue to pan out well with with Russell Gage. Now this leads over to the next piece of news, and this one's very unfortunate. This is a very tough one, but Henry Ruggs on Tuesday was released from the Las Vegas Raiders, and this is a very tough one, very tragic one. He was involved in a DUI incident where, unfortunately, a 23-year-old young lady lost her life because of the actions that were taken by Henry Ruggs. Our prayers, of course, above anything else, go towards this family that is suffering a very horrific heartbreak. And unfortunately for Henry Ruggs, his career is more than likely over, as he's facing felony charges for the situation that took place over there on Tuesday. And my hope and prayer is that a lot of young athletes that maybe looked up to Henry Ruggs, or maybe are just even watching what took place, they take it as inspiration, take it as a lesson learned to make smart decisions. And of course, this in no way is meant to be a video to condemn Henry Ruggs, but more so to extend ourselves for support and prayer that others can learn from this very tragic and horrific incident. And not to belabor the point, but now going to fantasy football, even though it's very hard to talk fantasy with a situation like this, what this means for Las Vegas is that you now hope that Bryan Edwards will get most of the workload, and as well as same with Darren Waller, who's already been heavily utilized for the Las Vegas Raiders. So we'll see how that pans out. But once again, our prayers and above anything else, our support goes over to that family who is currently suffering a very horrific mourning process with the loss of their 23-year-old daughter. Now, as we transition, we got another big news. And the star wideout, Odell Beckham Jr. was released on Friday by the Cleveland Browns. Earlier in the week, we saw Odell Beckham Jr.'s dad posting a video about Baker Mayfield not passing it to his son, kind of like signaling already the end for OBJ in his era with the Cleveland Browns. And it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. So the way this works is that waivers open up for Odell Beckham on Monday. So the earliest that he can sign with the team is going to be Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. So my thought is that he's not going to clear waivers. He's going to get picked up by a team among that process. Of course, a lot of people have been talking about whether or not the Lions will invest in Odell Beckham. My hope actually is that he goes to Las Vegas, being that Las Vegas still has room for another wide receiver. But if anything else, since Antonio Brown, they've been looking for that alpha wide receiver, and I think that Odell Beckham Jr. fits that mold. And with Derek Carr, a veteran quarterback that's very solid, very accurate, and can throw the ball deep down the field, I think this will be a good situation for him. My guess is that he may end up somewhere like Detroit or Atlanta, being that they are at the top of the waiver wire list in the NFL. So we'll see how that pans out. But for what this does for Cleveland, this now just solidifies Jarvis Landry to continue to get the steady workload that he's been getting. Last season, when OBJ was out, Jarvis Landry was a phenomenal play for Cleveland at wide receiver. And if you're looking for a dart throw, someone that may make some noise, that could be a lottery pick that can really pan out for you, I would take a shot at Donovan's Peoples-Jones. He is someone that is very athletic, someone that I think could support that role as the number 2 wide receiver in Cleveland. So just keep your eyes out on him, see what he does, and see how he pans out for you in week number 9, as well as through the rest of the season. And from there, now that we've gone over all the injury news, all the big news that we saw in the NFL, I'm going to go ahead and transition to the players that I love going into week number 9 that belong on your fantasy rosters. And the first one I want to go over is Robert Woods. Robert Woods has been absolutely, I think, under the radar. And I think ever since that week 5 performance where he just exploded, it's just amazing how productive he has been. Watch, since the week 5 explosion where he went for 12 receptions on 14 targets for 150 yards, he has been wide receiver number 9 on the season. So he's already building a stronger rapport with Robert Woods. With Matthew Stafford. And it's very easy to get lost with what Matthew Stafford has been able to do with Cooper Kupp, but Robert Woods has been steady. He's continued to see a healthy amount of target share and is going up against a pretty good matchup with the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee has given up the most yards, the most targets, as well as the most fantasy points to wide receivers, and I expect that to be a big big case as to why you should play both Robert Woods, and of course there was no question on whether or not you're going to play Cooper Kupp. So expect the big game for Robert Woods, who I think is going to have a phenomenal week in week number 9 with a matchup that is very favorable for the wide receiver. So expect a big game for Robert Woods in week number 9. And the next one I want to go over is Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry is going up against Cincinnati, who has given up the 4th most receptions to wide receivers, and Landry is someone that not only gets a lot of receptions thrown his way, no, rather, he gets a lot of targets thrown his way, but he also secures it, has a really high percentage of catch rate. And I believe that with the matchup, as well as with the opportunity that he has, now that Odell Beckham Jr. is now out of Cleveland, this opens up for Landry to have a phenomenal week. Landry has had 2 straight games over 8 targets or more, and he's has only had 1 game this season where he's only had under 5 yards. So Landry has only had 1 game under 5 targets this season, so I expect Jarvis Landry to have a phenomenal week going into week number 9 with the plus matchup going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, another player that I love this upcoming week is Elijah Mitchell. Now, Mitchell has had 2 games now back-to-back over 100 yards, and this has been a phenomenal story. I mean, someone, of course, like myself, who invested in Trey Sermon, would have never guessed that Elijah Mitchell would have been the running back of choice for San Francisco and for Kyle Shanahan. And the thing is, I think that he has a favorable matchup going up against the Arizona Cardinals, who have allowed the most yards per carry at 4.7. Being that the volume is there for Elijah Mitchell, I expect this to be a good matchup for him as well. So I actually made a trade for him this week, so I have him in one of my rosters. So I hope that he does well for me in week 9 going up against the division rival Arizona Cardinals. Now, the last one I want to go over, which I actually come to find out didn't make a graphic for, and that is Boston Scott. Let me go ahead and get that. My apologies on that. I thought I had Boston Scott on here, but I must have added it on the deck. But regardless, I'll go over Boston Scott's stats as to why he should be the starter. So let me go ahead and pull that up real quick so that we can go over that. So we're going to pull some stats up for Boston Scott, who's going up against a very favorable matchup. Let me see, where is Boston Scott? I have his stats right here. This is really, really embarrassing. Here we go. So, okay, Boston Scott. No one's on here anyway, so who cares, right? So we're going to go Boston Scott. All right. Boston Scott. Okay, cool. So we're going to go here, Boston Scott. All right. Here we go, Boston Scott. So Boston Scott's going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Since week 4, the Chargers are allowing the 2nd most points per game to running backs. And also last week, Boston Scott saw a surprising 12 touches when filling in for Miles Sanders, and now making it 7 career games where he's had 12 touches or more. He's averaging a total of 18.6 points per game. So I expect more of the same going up against the up against the Los Angeles Chargers. So a big game for Boston Scott. I expect them to continue that momentum going up against the Chargers in week number 9. Now that we've gone over Boston Scott, let's go ahead and go over my bold prediction of the week, and that features tight end Tyler Conklin.
It's a bold strategy, Todd. Let's see if it pays off for him.
In the past 5 games, Tyler Conklin has been a phenomenal play for the Minnesota Vikings. He has had 4 games now of over 4 targets or more. In the past 5 games, he has had 4 games of over 5 targets or more, making him tight end number 12. And the Ravens are the team that they're going up against this upcoming week, and they've given up the most points to the tight end in fantasy football in 2021. So I expect more of the same going up against the Minnesota Vikings, who have really been enjoying Tyler Conklin. And I think he's having a very quiet season from a fantasy perspective, but when it comes to the tight end spot, they're very quiet to begin with, considering that even last week, a lot of the main tight ends didn't do much. For instance, Travis Kelce was in the middle of the pack. I think he was in the mid-20s last week. So I predict that Tyler Conklin is going to have 7 receptions on 8 targets for 87 yards and 1 touchdown, going up against the Baltimore Ravens. So expect a big game for Tyler Conklin. This is my bold prediction of week number 9. And with that, guys, I want to thank you so much for making it to the very end of this video. You are all greatly appreciated. Be sure to not only like and subscribe, but be sure to stay tuned for future upcoming videos. And as always, best of luck to you this week, and keep it 100.